While I do give people a hard time about keeping too many things in their inbox, I understand that inbox management takes too much time, and that's why people don't do it. We have other things to do in our lives. Well, the new Conversation View allows us to simplify our inbox, as well as giving us new features to manage our mailboxes in general. So I'll go back to my Home tab, which has most of the common things that we will be using most of the time. Here I see some of the tools that interest me. If I look at Michael's inbox, for example, there is a message from an upgrade support team. This had to do with moving to a new version of the Exchange server. Michael doesn't care too much about this. It's about IT and infrastructure, which doesn't have anything to do with what he needs to work with. I'm sure that on occasion you get messages that aren't relevant. Whether it happens in larger organizations or just from your family and friends, you get those people who insist on sending you everything they receive, and they think it's funny, cute, or insightful. Did anyone say we got too much email? This is part of the problem. But if you receive things like this, and you don't want to be part of them anymore, you don't have to manage them anymore. Now you can let Outlook do that. In this example, when Michael doesn't want to be notified of all of these support issues, he clicks on the message. Then he goes to the top of his Home tab, under the Delete group, and looks for this option called Ignore. You'll notice that it is grayed out. That's because this message was actually forwarded to Michael, and he can't ignore something that was forwarded to him. Instead, let's see what happens when he clicks on a message that was directly addressed to him. For example, maybe Aaron had a PowerPoint broadcast, and he realizes that this is something for the sales department, and he's not part of that department. Now the Ignore option is available. When the button is clicked, it says the selected conversation and all future messages will be moved to the deleted items folder. This is exactly what we want. When people are sending you jokes or irrelevant conversations, you no longer have to manage them in your inbox. Outlook will automatically move them to your deleted items folder. They're not completely gone, and that's good news too, because if you needed to get part of it back, you could. All I have to do at this point is click Ignore the conversation. We see that it goes away, and everything is now handled automatically for me regarding this conversation. The next option has to do with conversations as well. Remember this one, which was about upgrading to Outlook Office, and there were several messages related to it? Well, what often happens when we have these messages is when people reply, they keep the original message as well. That, of course, takes up space. And if you're trying to look through things, you have to go back and forth between messages, trying to find which one has the information and which one has different information. Wouldn't it be simpler if you could clean it up and only keep the unique messages? The answer, of course, is yes. It would be great. And yes, Office does that. It does it by simply selecting the message and then using the cleanup feature, which is just below the Ignore feature on the Home tab. Notice that this has a drop-down, so we can clean up the conversation, or clean up an entire folder, or clean up a folder and all of the subfolders. So this could be a hugely powerful tool. When I first used this, I was testing the beta of Office. I had thousands of messages stored in other folders, and I was able to reduce it by about 32% because many of the mails that I send and receive contain the original message. It was a beautiful thing, and it saved a lot of my server space. In this case, I'll clean up the conversation. All redundant messages in this conversation will be moved to the deleted items folder. So again, it's not really deleting them, it's moving them to a different place. Then we can choose how we want to manage our deleted items, if we want to completely empty it or keep it for a certain amount of time. I'll click Clean Up. You can see that this is no longer a conversation thread. See how the little widget isn't there anymore? That's because all of the messages have been simplified, and now I only have the one message left that happens to have all of the original information. I love the mailbox cleanup feature. Now, if that wasn't enough, actually creating our email messages has gotten better too. Now, this shouldn't be anything new. I'll click New Email, and I get a typical email Outlook form. I'll enlarge this to get rid of the stuff in the background, and I'll get a simple message. Simple, however, has become redefined as the technology has progressed, and what I specifically wanted to show you here was the Insert tab for new messages. Not only can we type HTML and rich text, which has been around really for several years, but we can actually include a lot of advanced features now. By clicking in the body of the message, I won't throw out the entire message, but notice that I can insert shapes, smart art charts, and even screenshots directly into my email messages. So, as a quick example, I'll do some smart art and give that a click, and I'll pick one of my choices here. I won't bother to fill it out. I just wanted to show you that this is available now in the body of email messages as long as we're using the right format. In this case, HTML, which supports all of this rich content. Now, of course, I would need to address this, so I'll address it to Aaron. Notice that I still have quick tips here, and the good news is that they're now simpler to manage. If I want to remove an address, because I don't use it, or maybe it was the wrong address, I simply click on the red X to remove it from the autocomplete. I'll click on one, and then click Send. The second reason I wanted to show you how to work with the new email messages is this little box that shows up in the middle of the screen. This is a mail tip, and Outlook includes several built-in mail tips which help you avoid common but potentially costly or embarrassing mistakes. Mail tips alert you to things that are triggered by actions. For example, when you click on Reply to All and you're replying to a large recipient list, maybe if you're using Exchange, you're sending sensitive information to someone outside of your organization, or in this case, I'm sending a message without a subject line. This might not be critical, but we know that a lot of things are filtered as junk if they don't have a subject line, and it also isn't polite. So it's asking, do you want to send this without a subject line, or do you want to add one? I'll choose Don't Send, and then I'll type a subject. Now I intentionally made a mistake because I wanted to show you that if I go up to the Review tab, I should be able to do a spelling and grammar check, but there are a few issues. First of all, we don't get to spell check everything anymore. So let me start by clicking off of my Smart Art diagram. Then we can see that the spell and grammar check becomes available. The new feature that we have available in Office is the ability to spell check the subject line. I'm saying thank you, Microsoft, because even though I spell checked everything in an email, it never included the subject line. And sure enough, I would carefully proof and spell check the body of a complex message only to find out, after I'd sent it, that the subject line, the first thing that people see, had a mistake in it. So now I can click Spelling and Grammar, and in this case it says, "You're testing new features?" I'm sorry, I don't understand that. I think you mean testing. I'll fix that. The spell check is complete. I can say OK, and now that it is addressed to somebody and there is a subject line and I have spell checked that subject line, I can click Send. Now there are several other things that I won't go into a lot of detail on, but they include things you'll probably notice, like easy removal of names from the autocomplete addressing list we saw, or that your autocomplete list roams with you. In other words, when you use Exchange profiles on different computers, those things and signatures are going to go along with you, so they aren't tied to just one computer. That's that mobility goal of Office work again. But what it all comes down to is managing our mailbox, which can seem like an endless task. If we learn how to use the tools that we have in Office, we can minimize the disruptions and get back to work more efficiently. Managing the mailbox is one enhancement that seems like a little thing, but I guarantee that it will make a huge difference in the way you work and what you can actually accomplish.